Welcome, I'm so glad you're here. My name is Maria Angala. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher specializing in bilingual special education, and I created the A.C.C.E.S.S. Literacy Framework specifically for the students who are most often left out of rigorous instruction. Our ELL learners, our SPED students, are kids who've been told that grade-level content just isn't for them. This Masterclass is your introduction to that system. We're going to move through 2 sessions, and by the time you finish, you'll have a clear, concrete plan for bringing the A.C.C.E.S.S. framework into your classroom, starting Monday. Let's begin. But first, let me walk you through how this course actually works. This is a self-paced asynchronous course, which means you go at your own speed. Here's the structure. Each lesson is a short video, somewhere between 5 and 12 minutes. Watch it at whatever pace works for you. Pause, rewind, take notes. After each lesson, you'll see a reflection prompt. These aren't graded, they're thinking tools. Write your response in the workbook PDF that's attached to this course. At the end of each session, there's an application activity. This is where you take what you just learned and apply it to a real lesson from your own classroom. That's not optional. It's actually where most of the learning happens. And when you've completed both sessions, both workbooks, both activities, you'll submit your workbook and receive your certificate of completion. So let's get into it. Here's what's ahead in Session 1 specifically. Session 1 covers the first 3 steps of the A.C.C.E.S.S. framework: activate, clarify, and chunk. But before we get there, we're going to spend a little time on the why this framework exists, who it was built for, and what the research says about the gap it's designed to close. By the end of this session, you'll understand the full system at a big picture level, and you'll have a solid foundation in 3 of the 6 steps. Session 2 will complete the cycle. Let's start with the framework itself, and a little bit about why I built it. The A.C.C.E.S.S. Literacy Framework is original, research-informed, and classroom-tested. I didn't build it in a university office. I built it in real classrooms, with real students who'd been told in 100 different ways that rigorous content wasn't for them. ELL students who had brilliant ideas but couldn't get them onto paper in English. SPED students who understood the concept but couldn't access the text. General ed students who were bright and capable and completely overwhelmed by academic language. This framework is not a replacement for your curriculum. It's a delivery system, a way of making any content accessible without lowering the bar. We're not dumbing anything down. We're building the bridge. But first, let's make sure we're clear on what problem this framework is actually solving. I want to take a moment here before we dive into strategy, because the statistics behind this framework matter, not as numbers, as students. 67% of 4th graders in the United States read below proficiency. That's not a fringe number, that's the majority. English language learners are twice as likely to fall behind grade level. And more than 80% of students with IEPs need explicit structured literacy instruction. And most of them aren't getting it in a way that actually sticks. These aren't abstract statistics, these are real kids who were in your classroom this week. The question isn't whether the problem is real, the question is whether you have the tools to respond. And after this course, you will. So let me show you the system that was built to answer those statistics. Here it is, the full A.C.C.E.S.S. framework. 6 steps, 1 complete instructional cycle. A stands for activate, activating what students already know before new content begins. C is clarify, clarifying the language and vocabulary they'll need to access the content. The second C is chunk, breaking complex text and tasks into manageable sections without lowering the rigor. E is engage, engaging with evidence through structured writing, specifically the RACE strategy. The first S is support, providing and then strategically removing scaffolds. And the final S is synthesize, giving students a way to show what they actually understood. Each letter builds on the one before it. Together they make an instructional system. Not a checklist, not a set of disconnected strategies, a system. Before we move on, open your workbook PDF to Module 1 and complete the self-assessment table. Rate yourself 1 through 5 on each component. This isn't a test, it's a baseline. We'll come back to it at the end of Session 2. Now that you've seen the full system, let's start at the beginning with A. Here's the honest truth about activation. It's the step teachers skip most often because they feel pressed for time. And it's the step that costs them the most time when they skip it. Activation takes 5 to 8 minutes. A good activation sequence can save you 20 minutes of reteaching later. Because when students don't have a mental hook for new information, that information slides right off. Activation creates the hook. Now, here's the critical distinction. Activation is not a review of yesterday's lesson. That's rehearsal. This is different. Activation is about tapping the schema students already carry with them into your classroom, their experiences, their home knowledge, their language, their life. For ELL students especially, this is enormous. They often have exactly the knowledge you need them to have. They just need a bridge to the academic content you're introducing. For SPED students, activation reduces cognitive load before the hard work begins. Some quick activation moves, a KWL chart, a brain dump, a picture walk, a one-question partner share, a home language connection for bilingual students. These don't need to be fancy, they just need to happen. Now pause the video and write your response to the reflection prompt on screen. I'll see you in the next lesson. Next up, the second step, and it might be the most underestimated one in the whole framework. Here's what I call the hidden barrier, and it shows up in classrooms every single day. A student reads the passage, they understand it, but when you ask them to respond in writing, they fail. Not because they didn't understand the content, because they didn't have the academic language to demonstrate what they understood. That's a vocabulary problem, not a comprehension problem. And they're not the same thing. In the A.C.C.E.S.S. framework, vocabulary instruction is visual, contextual, and applied, not definitional memorization, not reading words off a list, context, connection, use. There are 3 tiers of vocabulary. Tier 1 words are everyday words, cat, run, big. Most students know these. Tier 3 words are content-specific, mitosis, denominator, isosceles. Teach these in context. Tier 2 words are your highest priority words. These are the academic words that cross all content areas. Words like analyze, compare, evidence, summarize, justify. These are the words that ELL students need most to access academic tasks. If you're working with ELL or SPED students and you can only focus on one tier, focus on Tier 2. That's where the biggest gains are. Pause and respond to the reflection prompt before moving on. All right. You've activated, you've clarified. Now we get to the step that intimidates teachers the most, complex text. I need to say this clearly before anything else. Chunking is not simplifying. The text stays grade level, the task stays rigorous. What changes is how students approach it. Think about it this way. If I handed you a 50-page contract and said, read and understand this by tomorrow, you'd probably feel overwhelmed. But if I said, read section 1 and tell me the main obligation it creates, then read section 2 and identify the key conditions, you'd actually do it. Same contract, same difficulty, different delivery. That's chunking. For text, break it into 1 to 2 paragraph sections. Give students a guiding question for each chunk before they read it. Use a graphic organizer to capture each chunk's main idea. Try a gradual release. You read the first chunk aloud, students partner read the second, and they tackle the third independently. For tasks, break multi-step assignments into numbered steps on a task card. Show one instruction at a time if possible. Add sentence frames at each step. Give students a visual checklist so they can track their progress. For ELL and SPED students specifically, consider providing a worked example for step 1 only. Not the whole thing, just enough to show them what done looks like. Chunking changes how students experience complexity, not the complexity itself. Pause and respond to the reflection prompt. Then head to the session 1 application activity. You've made it to your first application activity, and this is where the real learning kicks in. Here's what I want you to do. Choose one upcoming lesson from your current unit, something you're actually teaching next week, not a hypothetical. Open your workbook PDF to the Session 1 activity page and identify how you're going to activate, clarify, and chunk in that lesson. Write 2 to 3 sentences for each step explaining your specific choices, not what the framework says in general, what you are going to do with your students for this lesson. Give yourself real time with this. This isn't a box to check. This is your practice rep before the game. When you're done, Session 2 is ready for you.